The phone call came at 2 a.m., shattering the silence of my tiny Seattle apartment. My best friend, Marcus, was frantic, his voice trembling through the static. "Elliot, I need you. It's my uncle. He's in trouble." I sat up, heart racing, knowing Marcus never asked for help unless the world was falling apart. I'd known Marcus since our college days at UW, where we bonded over late-night study sessions and shared dreams of escaping our small-town pasts. He was the kind of guy who could charm anyone. Black, mid-20s with a contagious laugh and a knack for finding trouble. His uncle, Victor, was a name I'd heard in passing, a mysterious figure who ran a quiet bar in Capitol Hill and kept to himself. Marcus's voice now carried a weight I hadn't heard before, and I couldn't say no. By sunrise, I was at Victor's bar, a cozy spot called the Lantern, tucked between neon-lit cafes and thrift stores. The sign was flickering, half the letters burnt out, and the windows were fogged with condensation. Inside, the air smelled of whiskey and old wood, and Victor stood behind the counter, a tall, wiry man in his late 40s, with salt and pepper hair and deep-set eyes that seemed to carry a lifetime of secrets. He barely looked up as I entered, polishing a glass with a rag, but Marcus was pacing, his usual confidence replaced by raw panic. "Elliot, thank you," Marcus said, grabbing my arm. "It's bad, really bad." He glanced at Victor, who gave a curt nod, as if giving permission to spill the truth. Marcus lowered his voice. "Victor's being blackmailed. Someone's got photos, private ones, and they're threatening to ruin him." I froze. Blackmail? In 2025, Seattle was progressive, but Capitol Hill wasn't immune to cruelty. Victor finally spoke, his voice low and gravelly. "It's about me and someone I care about. They're saying they'll leak the photos unless I pay up or close the bar." His hands shook slightly, betraying the calm he was trying to project. I wasn't a hero. At 28, I was just a graphic designer scraping by, more comfortable with Photoshop than real-world drama. But Marcus was family, and Victor's quiet dignity pulled at something in me. "Who's doing this?" I asked. Victor hesitated, then slid a crumpled note across the counter. Scrawled in Sharpie, "Pay $50,000 or everyone sees you for who you are." No signature, just a burner email address. My stomach churned. This wasn't just about money, it was personal. "I can't lose this place," Victor said, glancing around the bar. "It's all I have." His eyes met mine, and I saw fear but also defiance. I didn't know then that helping him would unravel my own life, forcing me to confront truths I'd buried deep. Marcus filled me in as we sat in a corner booth. The photos, he said, were of Victor and a man named Leo, a bartender who'd worked at the Lantern until a year ago. They'd been closer than anyone knew. Leo, early 30s, Latino, with a warm smile and a knack for mixing drinks, had left abruptly, and Marcus suspected the blackmail was tied to their past. Victor wouldn't confirm it, but the pain in his silence spoke volumes. I suggested we trace the email, but Victor was skeptical. "I tried. It's a dead end," he said. "Still, I had a friend, Mia, a cybersecurity whiz who owed me a favor. I texted her the details, and she promised to dig." Meanwhile, Marcus and I agreed to stick close to Victor, who was adamant about keeping the bar open despite the threat. That night, the Lantern buzzed with its usual crowd. Queer couples, artists, and locals who treated the place like a second home. I watched Victor work, pouring drinks with a steady hand, but his eyes kept darting to the door, as if expecting trouble. I felt it too, a prickle of unease like we were being watched. Around midnight, a stranger slipped in, white, late 30s, with slicked-back hair and a too-perfect suit. He ordered a whiskey, but his eyes lingered on Victor too long. When he left, I noticed a folded note under his glass. My heart sank as I grabbed it. Tick-tock, Victor. 3 days. I showed it to Marcus, who cursed under his breath. Victor's face hardened, but he said nothing, just crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. I couldn't shake the image of Victor's trembling hands. This wasn't just about a bar, it was about his identity, his heart. I'd grown up in a small town where being bi meant hiding, and though I'd come out in college, I still carried that weight. Helping Victor felt like fighting for something bigger, something I hadn't fully faced in myself. The next day, Mia called. The email was routed through a VPN, but she'd found a lead, a local IP address tied to a co-working space downtown. It wasn't much, but it was something. Marcus and I decided to check it out, leaving Victor to run the bar. The co-working space was a sleek, glass-walled hub filled with tech bros and freelancers. We blended in, pretending to be startup founders, but my nerves were shot. Every glance felt like a threat. As we scanned the room, a familiar face caught my eye. The man in the suit from the bar. He was typing furiously on a laptop, oblivious to us. Marcus grabbed my arm, his voice low. "That's him. I know it." My pulse raced. We were close, but what came next would test us in ways I never imagined. We ducked behind a potted plant, watching the man in the suit. His fingers flew across the keyboard, his face lit by the laptop's glow. Marcus whispered, "We need to see what he's doing." I nodded, my throat dry. Confronting him felt reckless, but we couldn't let him slip away. I approached first, casual, like I was grabbing coffee from the nearby machine. Up close, he looked sharper, more dangerous. His jaw tight, eyes cold. I caught a glimpse of his screen, an email draft with Victor's name. My heart pounded. This was our guy. "Excuse me," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "You dropped something at the Lantern last night." A lie, but it got his attention. His head snapped up, and for a split second, fear flashed in his eyes before he masked it with a smirk. "Don't know what you're talking about," he said, closing his laptop. He stood, brushing past me, but Marcus blocked his path. "We know about the notes," Marcus said, his voice low but fierce. The man's smirk faded, and he pushed through, disappearing into the elevator. We didn't have proof, but we had a name, Ethan Caldwell, thanks to Mia's quick work hacking the co-working space's visitor log. She also found his social media, a real estate developer with a polished Instagram full of luxury cars and skyline views. Nothing screamed blackmailer, but his presence at the bar wasn't a coincidence. Back at the Lantern, Victor's reaction was guarded. "Ethan," he muttered, like the name was a bad taste. He admitted knowing him. Ethan had been a regular, always flirting with Leo, always pushing boundaries. "He didn't like that, Leo, and I got close," Victor said, his voice barely above a whisper. I saw the hurt in his eyes, and it hit me. This wasn't just blackmail. It was revenge. Marcus and I spent the next day digging deeper. Mia traced Ethan's digital footprint to a shady LLC that owned half the block where the Lantern Saturday. He's been buying up properties, she said over coffee at a crowded Pike Place cafe. Rumor is he wants to gentrify the whole area. Victor's bar is the last holdout. The pieces clicked. Ethan wasn't just after money, he wanted Victor out. The photos were leverage, a way to force Victor to sell or shut down. But why the personal vendetta? Victor wouldn't say more about Leo, but I sensed a love story buried under his silence, one that had left scars. That night, the Lantern felt different. tenser, like a storm was brewing. Victor was quieter, serving drinks with mechanical precision. I caught him staring at an old photo behind the bar. Him and Leo, laughing, arms around each other. The sight twisted something in me. I'd had flings, sure, but nothing like that. Nothing that made me feel exposed, alive. Around closing, a delivery arrived. A plain envelope with Victor's name. Inside was a USB drive and a note. Last chance. $50,000 or this goes public. Marcus wanted to smash the drive, but I stopped him. We need to know what's on it. We plugged it into my laptop, and my stomach dropped. The photos were grainy but unmistakable. Victor and Leo, kissing in the alley behind the bar. Their faces lit by a street lamp. Intimate, private, real. Victor's voice cracked as he spoke. Leo was everything. He left because he couldn't handle the secrecy. I thought I could protect him. He looked away, ashamed. I wanted to say something, anything, but words felt useless. Instead, I squeezed his shoulder, a silent promise to keep fighting. Mia worked her magic, tracing the USB's metadata to a print shop near Ethan's office. It was a lead, but we needed more. Marcus suggested confronting Ethan directly, but Victor shut it down. He's dangerous, he warned. You don't know what he's capable of. The next morning, I woke to a text from an unknown number. Back off, or you're next. My hands shook as I showed Marcus. We were in over our heads, but there was no turning back. I thought of Victor's photo, of Leo's smile, and realized this fight wasn't just about saving a bar. It was about saving a man's heart. We decided to tail Ethan. He lived in a sleek condo downtown, all glass and steel. Marcus and I staked out from a borrowed car, watching him come and go. Around noon, he met someone. A man in his 30s, wiry, with a nervous energy. They argued, voices low but heated. I caught the name Leo in their exchange, and my pulse spiked. Was Leo involved? Or was he a victim too? We followed the stranger to a rundown motel in Aurora. He went inside, and through a cracked curtain, I saw him pacing, holding a phone. Marcus wanted to knock, but I held him back. We need a plan, I said. But plans were hard to come by when every move felt like stepping on a landmine. The motel's neon sign buzzed faintly, casting a sickly glow over the parking lot. Marcus and I sat in the car, the air thick with tension. The stranger's argument with Ethan replayed in my mind. Leo's name, spoken like a weapon. I didn't know if Leo was a pawn or a player, but we needed answers. I called Mia, who was already digging into Ethan's LLC. He's got a history, she said, her voice clipped. Lawsuits, shady deals. And get this, Leo worked for him before the lantern. My heart sank. Leo wasn't just Victor's ex. He was tied to Ethan too. This was messier than I'd imagined. We waited until the stranger left the motel, then followed him to a diner nearby. He sat alone, hunched over a coffee, looking haunted. I took a chance and slid into the booth across from him. You know Ethan Caldwell? I said, no preamble. His eyes widened, but he didn't bolt. Who are you? He asked, voice shaky. His name was Javier, early 30s, with tired eyes and a faint accent. Puerto Rican, I guessed. He admitted to knowing Ethan, said he'd been hired to deliver the notes to Victor. It's just a job, he muttered, but guilt was written all over him. Those notes are destroying someone, I said, leaning in. Victor doesn't deserve this. Javier looked away, fingers drumming on the table. After a long pause, he spoke. Ethan's obsessed with Leo, always has been. When Leo chose Victor, Ethan lost it. My chest tightened. This wasn't just about real estate, it was a love triangle gone toxic. Javier didn't know where Leo was now, but he'd overheard Ethan mention a meeting at a warehouse in Soto tomorrow night. Be careful, Javier warned. Ethan doesn't play fair. Back at the Lantern, Victor listened to our update in silence. When I mentioned Leo's name, his face crumpled. Leo didn't want this, he said. He left to protect me. I saw the weight of years in his eyes, love, loss, regret. I wanted to ask more, but Marcus shook his head. Victor needed space. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Victor and Leo, about the photos that captured a love they'd had to hide. I'd spent years dodging my own feelings, keeping relationships shallow to avoid getting hurt. But seeing Victor's pain made me question what I was so afraid of. The next day, Marcus and I scouted the warehouse. It was a crumbling brick building, surrounded by chain-link fences and graffiti. We hid nearby, watching as Ethan's car pulled up at dusk. He wasn't alone. 2 men, built like bouncers, followed him inside. My gut told me this was bigger than blackmail. We crept closer, peering through a broken window. Ethan was pacing, talking on the phone. Leo's back in town, he snapped. Find him. My breath caught. Leo was here, and Ethan was hunting him. Marcus grabbed my arm, his eyes wide. We need to warn Victor. We raced back to the Lantern, but Victor was gone. A note on the bar read, "Gone to find Leo. Don't follow." Panic surged through me. Victor was walking into a trap, and we were too late to stop him. Marcus cursed, slamming his fist on the counter. We're not losing him, he said. Mia tracked Victor's phone to a pier near the waterfront. We sped there, the city a blur of lights and rain. The pier was deserted, save for a lone figure standing at the edge, Victor, staring out at the dark water. Victor, I called, running toward him. He turned, his face a mix of hope and fear. He's here, Victor said, voice breaking. Leo called. He's scared, Elliot. Ethan's got him. My heart stopped. This wasn't just about saving the bar anymore. It was about saving a life. Marcus grabbed Victor's arm. We'll find him. Together. We piled into the car, Mia feeding us updates. She'd hacked Ethan's phone, pinpointing a signal to an abandoned factory nearby. As we drove, Victor opened up. Leo and I, we were in love. But I was scared of losing the bar, of what people would say. I pushed him away. His voice cracked. I can't lose him again. The factory loomed ahead, a hulking shadow against the night sky. We parked a block away, moving silently. My heart pounded, but Victor's quiet resolve steadied me. Whatever happened next, we were in this together, and I was starting to realize I'd fight for love, too, if it ever came my way. The factory's rusted doors creaked as we slipped inside, the air thick with dust and the tang of metal. Victor led the way, his steps sure despite the darkness. Marcus and I followed, our phones' flashlights casting shaky beams. Every shadow felt like a threat, every sound a warning. We heard voices, low, angry, coming from deeper inside. Victor froze, his breath hitching. That's Leo, he whispered. My stomach twisted. We crouched behind a stack of crates, peering through the gaps. Ethan stood in a dimly lit room, flanked by his 2 goons. And there, tied to a chair, was Leo, early 30s, with curly blonde hair and a bruised face, but still defiant. You should have stayed gone, Ethan snarled, pacing. You and Victor thought you could humiliate me? Leo's eyes burned with anger. You're the one who's pathetic, Ethan. You can't force love. Victor tensed beside me, his hands clenched. I grabbed his arm, whispering, "We need a plan." But Victor's eyes were locked on Leo, and I knew he wasn't thinking straight. Marcus pulled out his phone, texting Mia for backup. She was already calling the cops, but they'd take time we didn't have. Ethan's voice grew sharper. "You cost me everything, Leo. That bar was supposed to be mine." He pulled out a phone, showing Leo the screen, likely the photos. Leo's face didn't flinch. "Do it," he said. "Show the world. I'm not ashamed." I felt a surge of respect for Leo, but also fear. Ethan's laugh was cold. "Oh, it's not just about you. Victor's done if these go public." That was it, Victor snapped. He stood, stepping into the light. "Let him go, Ethan," he said, voice steady but raw. Ethan spun, his face twisting with rage. "You," he spat, "you think you can play hero?" His goons moved toward Victor, but Marcus and I jumped out, blocking their path. "Back off," Marcus growled, fists raised. I wasn't a fighter, but adrenaline took over. We were outnumbered, but we weren't backing down. The standoff lasted seconds, but it felt like hours. Then, a crash. Leo had tipped his chair, distracting Ethan. Victor lunged, tackling Ethan to the ground. Marcus and I took on the goons, dodging punches and throwing crates. It was chaos, but we held our own until sirens wailed in the distance. Ethan scrambled to his feet, but Leo was free, cutting his ropes with a shard of glass. He ran to Victor, their embrace fierce and unapologetic. "I'm sorry," Leo whispered, tears streaking his face. Victor held him tighter, saying nothing, but his eyes said everything. The cops burst in, cuffing Ethan and his men. Mia had come through, sending them the photos and Ethan's digital trail. As they were dragged away, Ethan's glare burned into Victor, but it didn't matter. Victor and Leo were safe together. Outside, under the rain-soaked sky, Victor and Leo sat on a bench, hands clasped. Marcus and I stood back, giving them space. "I didn't think we'd pull that off," Marcus said, his voice shaky with relief. I nodded, my own heart still racing. I'd come to help a friend, but I'd found something else. A glimpse of what it meant to love without fear. Victor turned to us, his face softer than I'd ever seen. "Thank you," he said. "Both of you." Leo nodded, his smile weary but warm. "You don't know what this means." I did, though. I saw it in their clasped hands, in the way they leaned into each other. It was love, raw and real, worth fighting for. Back at the lantern, the bar felt alive again. Victor and Leo worked side by side, pouring drinks and laughing. Their connection a quiet rebellion against the world's cruelty. I watched them, feeling a pang of longing. I'd spent years hiding from my own heart, but their courage was contagious. The lantern glowed under the soft hum of fairy lights, packed with regulars celebrating Victor's victory. Ethan was behind bars, his LLC under investigation, and the bar was safe for now. But the real triumph was Victor and Leo, standing together behind the counter, their smiles a quiet defiance. I sat in a corner booth, nursing a beer, watching them. Victor, late 40s, his face lined with years of worry, looked lighter, like he'd shed a decade. Leo, early 30s, moved with an easy grace, his curly blonde hair catching the light as he teased Victor about his poor. Their love was a living thing, tangible in every glance, every brush of their hands. Marcus slid into the booth, grinning. "We did good, Elliot." I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. Helping Victor had cracked something open in me. I'd spent years dodging commitment, telling myself I didn't need anyone. But seeing Victor and Leo fight for each other, through fear, through shame, made me wonder what I was running from. Later, Victor pulled me aside. "You didn't just save the bar," he said, his voice low. "You gave me a chance to fix things with Leo." He paused, eyes searching mine. "Don't wait as long as I did to be honest with yourself." His words hit hard. I come out years ago, but living authentically, that was harder. That night, I walked home through Capitol Hill, the streets alive with music and laughter. I passed a couple holding hands, unapologetic, and felt a spark of hope. Maybe I could find that too. Someone to fight for, someone to share the mess of life with. The next week, the Lantern hosted a fundraiser for a local queer youth center. Victor and Leo spoke, sharing their story, not the blackmail but the love that survived it. The crowd cheered, and I felt proud to have played a part. Marcus nudged me, whispering, "You're a hero, man." I laughed it off, but deep down, I felt changed. Months later, I ran into Leo at a coffee shop. He was alone, grabbing a latte before his shift. "Victor's good," he said, smiling. "We're good." He hesitated, then added, "You should come by the bar. There's someone Victor wants you to meet." I raised an eyebrow and Leo laughed. "Just come." I did. The Lantern was quieter that night, and Victor introduced me to Sam. A soft-spoken guy in his late 20s with warm brown eyes and a shy smile. He was a regular, Victor said, and someone who gets it. We talked for hours about art, music, the weight of being ourselves in a world that didn't always understand. When he brushed my hand, I didn't pull away. Victor and Leo's story didn't just save a bar. It saved me from my own fear. Their love, hard-won and unapologetic, showed me what was possible. As I left the bar with Sam's number in my phone, I felt lighter, like I was finally stepping into my own truth. The Lantern still stands, a beacon in Capitol Hill, where love, in all its forms, finds a home. And for me, it's a reminder. Sometimes, helping someone else means finding the courage to help yourself.